Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Strategoy video. Ryan here with another preparing for AOS 4 video. This would be our fourth video of what we know thus far, and this is really could have been titled a reaction to the launch box, the Skaventide launch box that's coming out, hopefully in the not too distant future. I'm doing it on my own this time because Jonas and I once again wanted to get something out sooner than later, and couldn't get our schedules together. So we're finally getting to this content, and we've only had one article come out, one meaningful article come out in between the last video I made. So I think that was the terrain article. I think I'll just lump that in within whatever part 5 ends up being after we get enough stuff to cover it. Hopefully with Jonas alongside myself, so that we can get a broader perspective of takes and interpretations of what's going on here. But anyway, in the meantime, guys, make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe. Follow us in Discord, and leave some comments down below if you have anything you'd like to add. This video is going to basically be me just scrolling through the website instead of going through slides. So without further ado, here we go. Okay, so let's start by jumping in with the, I guess you could say, the overarching article. It's going to have some of the images from both the Stormcast side and the Skaven side, and I'm going to skip those in this article and then go to the main article for each of those after this. But let's take a look at what the box itself actually is. I'm not going to read everything here, just kind of quickly make my own comments on what we're looking at. So Skaventide is the jam-packed launch box for the new edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So as we scroll down, we get a nice view of everything that comes in the box. I generally like the presentation of the box. It seems to follow well with the end of the Dawnbringer Crusades type stuff. Like the Cities book kind of looked a little bit like this, with this more maroonish, darker reddish color here. And goes well with the books that we already have in the army, or in the game, the battle tomes. I mean, I think this is a little bit darker tone of red, so maybe the new battle tomes will kind of go this direction. But everything kind of fits with it itself pretty well. So the box here, there's a video. I didn't find the videos all that necessary to watch, but it is possible I've missed a couple things. As we can see, the photo here of all the miniatures, we've got obviously more Skaven models than Stormcast models, but that's no surprise given the playstyle of the two armies. And you can see that it comes with a number of books and everything. Let's scroll down here to see what's officially in the box. So we've got 24 Stormcast Eternals miniatures versus the 50 Skaven miniatures. Again, no surprise. 4 terrain features. This is a bit generous calling these 4 little guys, especially these 2 here, terrain features, because I don't even know if those would, count as any of the pieces that are in the new kind of small to large framework that they've kind of established for terrain now. These 2 smaller bits are almost more just decoration. Like in Old World, I know that the smaller ones of that size don't really count as actual terrain. You can just kind of walk around them as you like. Obviously, these bigger ones, they're kind of like smaller pieces from like what we saw in the Dominion expansion boxes and stuff. I can't remember if terrain came in the Dominion box itself, but definitely the Extremis boxes of different sizes that came out after the launch box had some amount of terrain in them. They look like kind of like pieces off of one bigger piece for those. So I guess it's handy to have these, but this is definitely not enough terrain to get started. Maybe for Spearhead, I don't know what the terrain situation is going to be. There, but definitely not for a normal game of AOS. But I'm not complaining at new, terrain pieces. 2 range rulers, okay, sure. And they did say that they're on those terrain pieces, and maybe these are the range rulers. They say later in the article that they can be made to be 6 inches or 3 inches, and then you can put them together somehow to maybe their snap fit or whatever to make them a 9-inch ruler. They haven't shown those yet, as far as I'm aware, but I guess that's handy. Then we've got, of course, the core rulebook. the Spearhead book, which I'm assuming this is the Spearhead core book, but there was an article that they posted maybe alongside with Spearhead, and we haven't covered Spearhead in detail yet on this channel, but there's an article that made it sound like there's a independent Spearhead launch box. Now, maybe it was just oddly worded and I read it wrong, or maybe they meant this the whole time. I don't know, but it sounded like they were going to include 2 Spearhead boxes worth of content, and from the way they presented it on the original article was that it might be the Cities box and the Feck box, and that those would come in ostensibly a separate Spearhead-only dedicated box, which would, I assume, have the Fire and Jade book in it as well. And then it said it would also have the double-sided game board and the Spearhead card deck and all that stuff. But you see that that's in this box as well. So I don't really know if that's how they're going to be selling it, like as 2 separate things. And then you'll see, unfortunately, something similar happening with the General Handbook cards. Now, the General's Handbook, I had mentioned this in a previous article, I think, or a video that we made. But the General's Handbook itself wasn't clear how they were going to be coming out with that. And I think this clarifies, but we'll get into that in more detail later. But kind of similar thing with, is it a separate product with Spearhead, or is this it? What they meant, because this does come with some terrain. It comes with the full map. We'll see it when we look at Spearhead, but it's typical GW that they say something, but then they're not 100% clear on what that is. As we scroll down here, we just see all the models. We'll go through this later. So the Stormcast side, the Skaven side, and then the other stuff that comes in the box. But again, they're going to break this down as well, and then the new book, which I don't know about you guys. I'm not a big reader of the extended lore. I'd like to be. If I had like infinite amount of time, I'd like to sink a bunch of it into getting to know the lore, especially considering the lore probably is getting better over time. But as it is now, I haven't even read all of my 2nd edition battle tomes all the way through with the lore, let alone what I have in the 3rd edition. I'll start a book and start reading, and then I forget where I was, and I kind of lose momentum, and then, completionist as I am, I feel like it's like I need to start over and do it all over again. So one of my goals eventually for Age of Sigmar is just to read everything that I've already got. So buying another book doesn't really make sense to me, but it would be nice to know the whole lore and feel a bit more like an expert of what's actually going on in the realms. But unfortunately, as time progresses and I become more rules focused, it just becomes lower in the priority list. Okay, so that's basically what the main article said. So let's go back to the general page and let's look at the other articles. So maybe we look at the Stormcast first. Everyone's got some amount of Stormcast, or a lot of people do. So, the Ruination Chamber. Meet the unshakable Stormcast Eternals leading the fight in Skaventide. Interesting that they're calling the book Skaventide. Or like the launch box, I mean. It's weird because, I don't know that any of the previous ones had the name of another army, like the opponent army, in the name of the launch box, and then no reference to Stormcast. Like, Dominion was neutral, right? It wasn't per se, like, specifically for one of the 2 armies that came in it, the Cruel Boys or the Stormcast. And then before that was Soul Wars, I think, might have been the name of the 2nd edition box. Again, definitely referencing Nighthaunt, but there's also souls involved in Stormcast. So it's interesting that they went this direction. But as a Skaven player, and as someone who's also a Stormcast player that's tired of seeing Stormcast always in the launch boxes, personally, and that's a little bit of foreshadowing for what we're about to talk about here, I don't mind it focusing on the Skaven and not the Stormcast. Okay, so they had a video, but let's get into the actual model. So we've got Lord Vigilant on Griff Stalker. I've already got problems just from the name. As anyone that has played against Stormcast or with Stormcast would know, we typically separate these guys into lords, the heroes at least, into lords and knights. And it's not always clear what makes someone that much better than the other type, other than just they told us that was the name. This is a Lord Vigilant. We have never used Vigilant as one of our Stormcast names, but it sounds a lot like Vigilors and Veritent and a handful of other things, and even the Griff Stalker. It's not a Griff Charger anymore, but you better believe, as long as this has the same base, I'm going to be using my old Griff Charger models, assuming that they're phased out. At least the Lord Arcanum one will be. I don't know about the Lord Oculor, because he wasn't listed, if I'm not mistaken, on the squatting list. But in any case, I will be using those models as this guy if I need any more than what comes in the launch box. Do I think it's a cool model? Yes, it looks great. Does it look... Is it enough of an improvement over the other ones, like the previous existing models, that I feel like they should have squatted the other ones, and or that I'm not going to use the old ones? No, not at all. Will I use this model as my Lord Vigilant on Griff Stalker in games, in the coming year or whatever? Yes, but say I want to take Stormcast to a tournament and I haven't built this guy yet. Will I use one of the other ones? Of course I'll bring it, as long as it's on the right base. I'm hoping it is, just for everyone's kind of ease of transitioning from their old collection to the new one. Also, of course, it gives me an excuse to put more time into, like, let's say I've got one copy of a Lord Oculor on Griff Charger, and then the other type, which is the Lord Arcanum, and then I've got this, and they're all on the same bases. I probably would paint up the old models first, if I don't already have them painted, just as kind of like, maybe I want something to quickly get on the battlefield and use, but then maybe, even though I'm not a great painter, just something where I put a little bit more time and care into. So having some extra copies of something that could be interchangeably used. Yes, the weapons are going to be different. I don't really care. Having more copies of those gives me a chance to treat them differently with respect to painting and taking them more or less seriously in that sense. As we scroll down, we see more detail of the model. Again, as not being a painter guy and, whatever, I don't have a lot of strong opinions on this. I do like the skull on the shield. I think that looks really nice. It's kind of weird that they're painting the Griff Stalker, which, again, that's another complaint, is why is it not a Griff Charger anymore? I know they said something in the lore about it, that it like kind of steals the souls. It's got a little bit of more of a Soul Reaper, Vulture kind of vibe going on, but you could have just called it a Griff Charger, I think, and then it's still, you could just say the one that he trained, this Lord Vigilant. Yes, I got it right this time. Lord Vigilant, the type he trains has different abilities, but again, maybe we don't have Griff Chargers in the game anymore. Well, we know that the Vanguard Paladors aren't going away, evidently, so those are Griff Chargers, so I guess we do have them in the game. And of course, it goes without saying that the squatted Stormcast stuff is, in any case, the Sacrosanct stuff is going to be eligible in its own quote-unquote battle tome for another year. So when I say it's not in the game anymore, I mean after that year has elapsed. But kind of a running theme with all these Stormcast things, I don't know if it's enough of an improvement for me to be like excited about it. And something else that I feel like is missing from this launch box is a big model for each army. Like, the biggest that we've got for the Stormcast is this one. You could say taking up surface area would be, I guess, the Prosecutors with their big wings. And that's about it for the Stormcast. And then on the Skaven side, you got the new lightning projector thing, whatever it's called, artillery piece thing. And then you've got the new, what's he called? Gnaw Lord? Yeah, something like that. Claw Lord, is that what it is? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. Claw Lord, I think it is. He's on the beast, and that's roughly this size, probably a little smaller. And then the Rat Ogres, I guess, are taking up more space. But in general, it would be nice to have at least a mid-level monster. I'm thinking like Charybdis Hydra size, a War Hydra size, just to have something that felt like, oh, I got a big piece with that. Like typically when they sell a Spearhead, or formerly known as Vanguard box, or start collecting, they usually had something that was a little bit bigger, a chariot or something like that. But none of these are on a chariot size base or bigger, as far as I'm aware. So that's a little bit of a bummer. But anyway, moving on. Lord Veritant. This guy's just replacing a previously existing kit. This model is unquestionably cool. Like, and this they changed the name of this thing too. I got to go back. It would be a Griff Hound, but this is a Griff Crow. Okay, do your thing, but silly. This model is great. Like, it might be my favorite upgrade of all the Stormcast models. It just has, the flames are cool. Him being blind, I'm assuming there's another head that you can swap out here. The shield on the back is badass. Like, this is a cool model, but I'm not buying this box for this model, like I'm buying it because, whatever. Assuming he's on for the rules and stuff, assuming he's on the same base, these two are on the same basis as what the previous Lord Veriton and his Griffhound were, same story as above. I'm going to use my old models. I've got a Lord Castellan as well, and I think he's going away. So this guy's replacing the Veritant, but I'm going to keep using those models for something. We'll see what else comes in the Stormcast. It's worth pointing out that just because something's not in the launch box does not mean it's not coming out in the months to follow, along with the new battle tomes for Stormcast and Skaven. So if you don't see it here, that doesn't mean anything. It just means it's not coming out in the initial wave in the box. And who knows when these models will be individually able to purchase, or purchasable, I should say. But I love this model. It looks great. It's super cool. I'm assuming he's still a... was he a priest? Yeah, I think he was a priest. Yeah. Okay. Lord Terminos. This is like essentially a hero version of the Reclusians. He's even got the little guy next to him. The little, I've been calling him Stormcast, or Cities guys. He's a badass, sure. But do we need another foot hero? I was debating this with myself before I made I started the video here. Was like, why does Stormcast need to be in this box? We've got plenty of heroes even with all the squatting. And do we really need another foot hero? I feel like what they could have done, at least in the launch box even, well, hopefully with the release that comes out after this, is add different troop types that do different things, that aren't just 5-inch moving guys, or maybe this guy's even 4 inches because he's like more paladin-esque. Having more cavalry options, having maybe more artillery options, having... I don't know, other tricks, monsters maybe, or lightning elementals, or something that feels like it's changing the way that Stormcast interacts with the play mechanics instead of just, let's release another guy. Do I think he looks badass? Yes, and evidently he's pretty tall. I mean, he's standing on some stuff, and that axe is humongous. But at the end of the day, there's a part of me that just kind of doesn't care. I'm assuming this guy pairs well with the Reclusians, and they made it sound like he's kind of like a lone guy. He has to kind of go do his own thing, but for the record, I haven't really read the full text of these because I kind of don't care. Like, I'll care later once I dive into the lore stuff, but for right now, I'm more focused on what this means for playing the game and not what's going on in my head, as the periphery, if you will, about the game. For some people, that's really important, and no shade to that. In fact, if that makes you enjoy the game way more, then by all means, go for it. But as a more rules kind of, I guess you could say, competitive-oriented person, I would have rather seen the text here underneath all these things saying something about like what kind of stats they have or abilities they have. But hopefully we'll see that in some of the upcoming Warcom articles. Night Quester. People were talking about, why didn't this guy get pulled out of, or some version of him, Errant Quester, Night Quester. One of them, I never had this model because it was kind of like a random, probably from like some... White Dwarf release or some special edition, a special release limited edition kind of thing. But there was a Errant Quester or a Night Quester or something like that. And this guy is replacing that. He looks cool, sure. I like the flames. I dig it. They said he's the only... I think he's the only one that isn't in the Reclusian order. But they basically said between the Lords and the Knights that there's a type that kind of goes on a errant quest. And that's kind of what this guy is all about. Very Bretonia-esque. His shield is probably the most boring of the shields we've seen, but I like the flame. I like the hair. I'm definitely more into seeing Stormcast without their helmets on, but that's a personal preference, and who knows, maybe this guy has a helmet as well. I have a feeling from a little thing I saw in the video that a lot of these models are push fit, which makes total sense given this starter box. So who knows? Maybe there's some choices for kind of the way you position the body and stuff. Then we got the Reclusians. We've already basically seen these guys, but here I'll scroll through a little bit. Honestly, like Jonas was saying at some point, these guys basically look like heroes unto themselves, especially when they're put next to the regular little dudes. I mean, so I was debating this too. They're basically paladins, meaning they're more elite troops that come in units of 3, plus of course these two like Memorians or whatever they're called. Yeah. So it's kind of a unit of 5, but it's really a unit of 3 Stormcast dudes with, who knows if those other dudes even fight. It could be like they have to stay in unit coherency. They probably do. It could be that they just can go off and do their own thing, like Griffhounds with the Knight Judicator, the big like archer guy. It could be that it's like the old way that it worked with some of the guys that would bring a Griffhound into the game, like the Lord Imperatant, that the Griffhound is considered part. He has to stay within unit coherency, like 1 inch, and then he counts as the extension of the model, but isn't kind of its own thing. They both kind of work together at the same time. So I could see it going all those different ways, but if I had to guess, I'd say they count as an independent model that can fight, and that therefore they're part of the unit and have to be part of coherency. But who knows? I like this unit, but the thing I was kind of debating with myself was, like, could we have just kept a previously existing paladin unit around and then just given them new rules and called them Reclusians instead of squatting them? Problem is, the paladins we had were protectors, I think decimators. I always forget if it's decimators, desolators, but I think it's decimators. And then the other one was retributors, or retributors, whichever way you like to pronounce it. But they come in units of 5. And obviously this is not trying to replace them. Now, of course, GW can make whatever they like. We already have, oh no, I'm blanking on the guys that protect. Oh boy. It's a type of paladin unit that protects a unit. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but they basically give a bodyguard save to Praetors. That's what it is, to a hero. They come in 3s, and they were in they came in the Dominion launch box, if I'm not mistaken. And then we had also, of course, the 2 different versions of Annihilators. So we already have 3s. Why not just make a unit of 5s and then say, hey, if you want to use your protectors and stuff, you can use them. I think that would have been better, but again, maybe there's too much salt going on here with the squatting. I just feel like they could have handled it better, but I get that they want to incentivize people to buy new kits. These are upgrades in terms of looks, and I just think it would have been better if they made them 5s, so that you'll buy the new ones if you want to buy the new ones. Same with like clan rats, a lot of the Skaven stuff. There's no reason you can't use your old clan rats, so just because they made a new upgraded version of it doesn't mean like your old ones are garbage. So I think that would have been a better place for these guys to exist, because we took the paladins out that have 5 models. So now paladins are just implicitly 3 models, but whatever. All right, prosecutors. We've already talked about these. I think they're cool, but I didn't need them in my life. I'm glad, though, that they're going to be getting new rules and probably will be more decent in the game because they're a focal point now. That said, it's worth pointing out, a lot of the stuff that came in the Dominion box last time around was actually, a lot of those things were actually things you didn't take in real games in any competitive sense. They looked cool, but like the Knight, what's his name? Well, the Knight Vexillor with the banner, the better banner, or well, not better, but the one that brought units back, didn't see a whole lot of play. That's the banner of Apotheosis, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Knight Relictor, I believe is what he was, the kind of like lower level priest. No one really used him. And the Knight Arcanum, I think these all came in the box. No one used them. And Drosta didn't even get used that much. So it was a lot of stuff that didn't get a lot of love. So I say that this stuff is it's good that we're focusing on the wing guys, because I like flying units. I like that Stormcast has some access to something that plays differently than just slow-moving guys on the field. But at the same time, I'm worried, just because of what we've seen in the past, that just because something's in the launch box does not mean it's going to be good. In fact, it might actually go the other way. But we'll see. Because there will be a wave after this, a wave of stuff that comes out that they have to sell independently and for full price, and not like discount like in this box. And so they might make the rules better for those things, like they did with Stormdrake Guard and the Chariot, and maybe some other things. Annihilators with Grand Hammers. Okay, and here's the Liberators. We've already seen them, or at least some amount. Again, I really like the ones without helmets. I think they just look good. Yep. I mean, look how cool that guy looks. Having women in is cool, too. Neat. Yep. Sounds good. Looks good. From the looks of the box, you get 10 of these guys, and then everything else you just get like a minimum size unit. So there's 4 heroes, plus 10 libs, 3 prosecutors, and then the Reclusians. 1 unit of 3 Reclusians plus their 2 little guys. And that's it for the Stormcast. All right. Let's move on to the Skaven. All right. Now, the Skaven squatting is a totally different thing. There are going to be some things that go away, probably giant rats and rat swarms, maybe some of the weapons teams. But in general, I fully expect a 1-for-1 replacement for almost everything that's going away with something new. Now, this is one of the rare exceptions where we've got a Claw Lord on Gnaw Beast. I think that's why I was thinking Gnaw earlier. This model's fantastic. It's a little bit Cruel Boys-esque with a kind of a rat, obviously, theme. I love his pistol. It probably only has like 9-inch range or something, but it looks cool. A little rattling pistol. In fact, that might be the name. I haven't even looked at the lore stuff. Weapon looks cool. I'm glad we got a guy in cavalry. I'd really like to see a complementary unit that he goes with that's also cav, but knowing GW, a lot of times you don't get a 1-for-1 on these things. Like, you know, Cities has lots of cavalry units, but until recently didn't have a cavalry hero that wasn't on a big monster. And so it was always kind of like this, well, my heroes can't keep up with the guys anymore. Of course, issuing commands to yourself, which we know is true for all units now, does help free you up a little bit, but it's always nice to know that your heroes can keep up with your regular units. But I love this model. Looks great. Let's see. More detail. Yeah, not too much to say about the extra detail, but it looks great. I'm a big fan. And it's a new unit. We'd never had this War Scroll. Okay, so then we got Gracier. I don't know why we needed an update for this guy. I'll just say. I mean, it's clearly a better model, but not by a lot. You know, like the old Gracier, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were 2 ways to build a Gracier, in the sense that you could buy the old plastic standalone kit, and then if you bought the Screaming Bell, that kit, and say you built it as a Plague Furnace, there was always the option to build a Gracier or a Plague Priest, and so you kind of implicitly got a free hero for whichever version you didn't build. And so there was a Gracier there. So I imagine people have more Graciers than they need, and this is just... I mean, it's dynamic. It's cool that he's standing on like a Screaming Bell. Looks cool. But I didn't need a new model for this. But okay, sure, do your thing. Rat Ogres. This is definitely my favorite thing that they've released in this launch box, unquestionably, because it, especially of all the things that replaced something, because it needed to be done. The old Rat Ogres kit was so bad that I just didn't buy it because I knew they were going to replace it eventually and could just wait. But these guys, and in fact, when I watched the launch video, I thought these were Storm Fiends, because they look so Storm Fiendy. And of course, if we scroll through, we get the one guy, he's always had a gun. The leader of the group has had a gun. But God, these guys look great. They look fantastic. They all have different poses. And the only thing I'm sad about is that they only have 3 of them in the box. And then you think, well, maybe I want to buy 2 of these boxes, but then there's just so much extra stuff I don't need. And I think these are going to be one of the big hot ticket items unless the War Scroll sucks. Because people are just ready to get good-looking Rat Ogres. They've wanted good-looking Rat Ogres ever since that. I forget what the name of the limited edition box was, but it came with like Island of Blood. Maybe it was something like that. They came with like a better version of a Rat Ogre. And if I'm not mistaken, these guys used to come in units of 2, and it appears that they're in units of 3 now. So that might throw a few people off that had collections, but honestly, I don't think anyone's going to be complaining, really. I mean, like, this is so needed, and they look great. You know. In fact, I'd say they look better than the Storm Fiends, but that's what you'd expect if they're updating things. Okay, then we get the Rattling Warp Blaster. I love it, no complaints at all. It's somewhere between a weapons team and a Warp Lightning Cannon. as a Warp Lightning Cannons guy, I'm all about it. I'm psyched. It looks like kind of like a rattling gun version of a Warp Lightning Cannon. I'm down for it. I'm here for it. It's a bummer you can't build it in multiple ways, I don't think. And looks fantastic. Now, I do have a question. Is this the same model that whoever put it together with like the leaked sprue, is this that same model? I think it is, but it looked a lot smaller. Like, I think the way that person put it together, it didn't have the rats here pushing it around on the ground. I don't know. But in any case, I'm all about it. I just want to see the rules for it. And I hope that the weapons team stuff gets replaced and gets updated in a way that feels good. But if this is our only replacement for weapons teams and they go entirely away, I don't really have a huge problem with it. I lose a few models, but they definitely need to be replaced or go away, I guess. To keep selling the metal models is just silly. But looks good. No complaints. Happy. And it's probably the coolest big piece that's in the launch box, just because it's like has a different function as like a type artillery, in contrast to the two guys, like the Skaven guy and the Stormcast guy, riding a beast. Okay, cool. But this actually feels kind of like you'd see this from a distance and be like, oh, that's different. And I'm glad that there's at least something in the box. Warlock Engineer. The Giselles are Warlock, if I'm not mistaken. But Warlock Engineer, we've already talked about this guy extensively in another video. I'm fine with it. Bummer that he's not a wizard, I guess, but whatever. Clan Rats, maybe more to see here. The command unit in particular looks better. I mean, this guy right here you can see is much more dynamic. All of them, really. And I think the box comes with 20 of these guys, which is probably one box worth when they go on sale for, independently. One box worth of them. And that's probably also how the Liberators will be sold, is as a unit of 10 in a box. Even though they're probably MSU at 5. So smallest possible unit is 5. But yeah, I mean, these guys look great. Do I need them? Not really. I've got 60 already, and I was never much of a Hordes player, but they look great, and I don't mind having more. So, would I get more than another 20? Probably not, but, cool. Okay, and then the Warp Lock Giselles. We've already seen these, but not all 3 of them. Can confirm now that we're getting 3 of them in the box, and I'm assuming they come in a unit of 3 like they always did. This is a kit that definitely needed updating and seems pretty cool. We know a little bit about the stats of these guys, but not the whole War Scroll. Okay, so that's the Skaven stuff. Let's look at like the rules and the books and other stuff. So here we go with the core book and match play cards. I did listen to this video. It didn't really inform a whole lot, and there was something that Matt Rose said does seem to contradict what's being said later, but with the match with the General's Handbook stuff, but we'll come back to that. So 272 pages. It's a big boy. I like the cover. I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but I like it more than the Andrasta one that came with the last launch box, if only because it still says like all this stuff and it's not like the limited edition one. I personally don't need a limited edition looking book. I like them to fit well with the rest of my collection. So I like the standard editions. That's just my personal preference. In the interview, they talked about how they're changing the perspective of this. Instead of like a top-down from the god's perspective, a god's eye view, they're now doing from a mortal's perspective. Callus and Toll telling some of the story, having more kind of tidbits about what everyday life is like, which is great. I think this is definitely a way to keep people tethered to the realms instead of just thinking of it from the god's perspective. They talked about this map of the cosmos and how all of that works. Definitely cool because it's been a little unclear how they work, and it's probably still a bit unclear because it doesn't make any sense from a real world perspective, but it's still probably more detailed than what we've had thus far. And they even said they were going to talk about the flora and fauna and some other things in the world. And you can see from these pages, it looks fantastic. I mean, some of this art we've already had, of course, but it seems like they're really trying to sell the book by proving it has value outside of just the rules. Because we know that when you buy the standalone General's Handbook, it's going to come with all the rules in it. So you don't need the core book. And carrying that a 272-page book around to tournaments is kind of silly, considering the vast majority of it is lore and heavy metal painting examples of different armies, which is great, but this is more of a resource or just like a pretty book to have, and it's going to have all this great lore in it, which I'm glad they're focusing on the lore and trying to tell it from a different perspective instead of just copy-pasting what they've done before and then adding a few new things in. You can see this is how the painting stuff's going to look. Looks really nice. I like the color schemes, very rich and vibrant, and I'm digging it. Like, I like having the big book, even though, honestly, I probably have only looked at my core book for 2nd and 3rd edition, especially 3rd edition, only a handful of times. Once I started getting the actual rules in the General's Handbooks, that's where I looked at all the core rules from that point on. Now, it comes with, they said this, I mean, this is obvious, it comes with the First Blood Match Play Battle Pack and the Path to Glory Ascension Battle Pack. Actually, we see here that we've got three of the three missions. I think it was only 3 in First Blood. So if you were to zoom in on this, you could study how all of it works in First Blood. But honestly, I don't think it's all that surprising. Interesting from my perspective is how many objective markers we'll need. So like whoever's selling the new objective markers, how many they'll need in a given set. We see here that the max is 5, at least for the core rules version of the match play rules. But we don't know for the GHB maybe yet. I think we do have a page that they showed us that says what all the missions are, but I don't know if we've seen the actual maps. So it could be that those missions are exactly the same in terms of number of objectives as they once were, seeing as all the missions are accumulated from previous GHBs, or it could be that they decide to change the number of objectives on some of them, so who knows. But it'd be nice if we capped out at about 6, as we currently have, I think. But we have seen as many as 8 in the recent GHBs. Okay, so you can pick up the core book later after the release of the launch box with slightly different art. That's weird. And then a gorgeous collector's edition. So there's that. Now here's one of my big points of contention is the General's Handbook cards. The presentation is nice. It comes in a nice little box that you're probably going to accidentally destroy by carrying it around with you like this. But until it gets destroyed, I guess it's handy. 17 cards that probably there's 1 card for each of the 12 missions, and then there's 5 additional cards. And we can see what they are here. Yeah, so they said that. 12 double-sided battle plan cards. And then including the terrain on the back side, because you can see on the front side it's the rules plus the basic map. And then we can see that we've got, here's all the battle, so like I was saying, here's all the names of the 12 different battle plans, so we know them now. And then the core rules, and then the battle tactics, and then a scoring sheet. So that means of the 5 additional pages, we're sheets here, or whatever cards, I'm assuming these are big, we know 4 of them. Now we don't know what's on the back side of these, but from the way they talked about it, and we'll get to in a second, the rules that are coming with the launch box do not cover endless spells or invocations at all. That's only in the standalone GHB, which makes me a little frustrated. But let's come to that in a second. It says a full General's Handbook will also follow. So full, I'm not liking that word. Containing all the core and advanced rules, alongside endless spell updates, scoring sheets, and so on. Which means implicitly it's coming with more than what they've got on these 17 card kind of handy to use in your actual games version of the General's Handbook rules. And it's better than we've ever had that the General's Handbook stuff is coming out immediately with the launch box. But at the same time, pretty frustrating that I think a lot of us that are serious about collecting this stuff and having everything at our disposal are going to feel compelled to buy, or at least download a PDF of the stuff that we're missing, a copy of the GHB. Yes, it'll have all the core rules in it, which is great, core and advanced rules. I need to separate those two things because it used to be that core is just all the rules, but core and advanced rules. So that's nice to have in, like, I'm assuming it'll be in a spiral bound book again that you can just easily flip through. But it's just GW's way of selling something extra. I guess the flip side of that is they're giving you a handy way to kind of just have all the cards here, and that is handy. You could just set it on the board, exactly the one you need, and not have everything just floating around and having to flip through that. That's, I guess, handy. And they're also giving you most of the rules off the bat. You could probably just get a PDF version of the Endless Spell stuff, or maybe that'll be in an app somewhere, and then you don't really need it separately. And then maybe you don't need the GHB after all. So we'll have to see. I'm hoping that it's not just a money grab situation where you feel compelled to go get it, and that this will be enough. But we'll see. Spearhead. Okay, so it also contains, the launch box also contains a 144-page hardback Spearhead Fire and Jade book, which contains all the rules you need to play, including core rules, Spearhead rules. So you'll see that the core rules probably are the exact same core rules as mentioned in the last part of the article about the regular rules. And then if you want advanced rules, instead of advanced rules here, you're getting Spearhead rules. The Fire and Jade battle plan, they said plan, but I think that's probably plans, or battle pack is what they meant there. And full printed rules, because we know that it's more than one mission. And full printed rules for every single Spearhead army currently available, as well as the Sons of Behemoth, and 2 new Spearheads made from models in the Skaventide box set. Now this introduces a new thing. We haven't talked about Spearhead extensively, but just shortly, there were all the army rules. They're introducing Sons of Behemoth with the mini Gargants, like one group of 3 of them, I think, is what it's going to be. That's your whole Spearhead army. And then this kind of answers a question, because the old Vanguard box for Stormcast was just Thunderstrike stuff, if I'm not mistaken, so that still counts. It might even be a Spearhead box. It might already be labeled a Spearhead box. I can't remember, but I think it might be a Vanguard. And then, but in any case, the old Skaven Vanguard box came with the old clan rats, and I have a feeling they're going to repackage them. Now there's the question of, they said it's a subset of what's coming in this box, so that's kind of, they said 2 new Spearheads made from models in the Skaventide box set, but I imagine it's not the whole set, because they said that's like 1,200 and some odd points, maybe just flat 1,200 points per army for the Stormcast and Skaven halves each. So I'm assuming the Spearhead is going to be a subset of those. And then the question is, how many more Spearheads are we going to get? Is every army going to eventually have 2 different options to play with? Are we going to have a haves and have-nots situation where, oh, well, Stormcast has 2 now, and so does Skaven, but then the other armies only have 1? Is that does that mean they have less options, or that, they feel a bit left out? I don't know. Or are some of are the ones that come in this box just temporary, and they're just kind of holdovers until we get a different version of it? Who knows? Maybe we'll have 50 Spearheads available by the end of 4th edition. Who knows? For me, it doesn't really matter as long as they're balanced. But I am very excited about Spearhead. We'll cover it in more detail later. Yeah, and so they said rules for your Spearhead forces will be available at the upcoming faction packs and put online for free download shortly after the launch of the new edition. Okay, and I think there might have been one other article. Let's check. Yeah, here's the Spearhead article. Okay, so a bit more on Spearhead. Again, not going to dive too much into it. They did a video, but I didn't watch it, so maybe I'll cover that when we talk about Spearhead in general. But we do know in the box we get this Akshi and Giron double-sided mat, which is probably just cardboard that folds out. Looks like this. That has objectives, I'm pretty sure, printed on it, so you don't ever have to measure and set them up. That's nice. So I guess that means we're always working with that same number of objectives. And looking at how small this board is really makes you think, oh yeah, you're going to be fighting from like the beginning of the game, even with those just little armies. And I guess I just talked about it, but didn't think it through. This photo might be showing us exactly what comes in those Spearhead boxes, assuming that nothing has died yet. So if that's true, this is the new Lord Veritant. This is the new Lord Vigilant. This is the prosecutors. These are the prosecutors. These are the liberators. And then we've got over here, I think that's all the Stormcast stuff. So that'd be 2 heroes, the prosecutors, and the liberators. So leaving out the Reclusians, the Reclusian hero, what was he, Terminus or something like that, and then the the Knight Questor, apparently, if I'm seeing this correctly. And then for the Skaven, we've got the Gracier, and then the Clawlord on Gnawbeast, or whatever it was called, plus a unit of 10 clan rats, and then arguably either these clan rats have already died, and they're eligible to come back with the recursion mechanic, I forget what it's called, reinforcements mechanic that they have, or then you get both of them and they've died and they can come back. I don't know. And then you probably, considering that a box would normally sell with whatever would come in the individual boxes, then that would be a thing. That it would be all 20. So who knows? And then you got the Rat Ogres. So not the what's it called? The new artillery piece. And then we've got over here, that might be, I'm trying to see if that's right. Is that the new? Well, it doesn't have the Jezzails in the list, and it doesn't have, and I'm trying to figure out if this is the Warlock Engineer. Kind of looks like it, but it could also be a Stormcast model, and I'm just not seeing it well. But in any case, that gives us an idea of what might be in these Spearhead collections. And then, of course, it comes with the Spearhead cards you need, which is nice, and obviously the objective markers and this amount of terrain. I don't know. Oh, these are the little measuring sticks that come with it, evidently. So this is a 6-incher, and then you can kind of maybe piece them together to make 9 inches. They look like they might be snap fit or something. Let's see. Yeah, snap together, exactly. Here's the rules. Then the two maps, or two sides of the same map. The snap fit rule thing. The terrain. A little card holster for the different cards that you're going to have. So, handy. And the question is, will there be something else you need? Let's see what they say. We've already seen the miniatures and 2 new Spearheads, the Vigilant Brethren, Stormcast Eternals, and the Gnawbeast Claw Pack for the Skaven. Rules for all of these Spearhead boxes are found in Spearhead Fire and Jade and will be available to download for free after launch on the Warhammer community. And then, of course, you can win a box of the Skaventide. 10 people will be given this if you're registered by the end of the month. And there we have it, guys. Hopefully you found that interesting to see what my first reactions are to everything. Let us know how you're feeling about it, the launch box. Are you excited? Are you disappointed? Kind of meh? Where are you sitting on that spectrum? Are you thinking about picking it up? Are you going to share it? Are you going to split it with some people? How do you feel about the revitalization of certain models? Because ultimately this was really more about the new models, right, than all the rules stuff. What are you thinking about the GHB situation? Are you excited about Spearhead? Let us know what you're thinking. Come join the conversation in the Discord and then down below in the comments. And we look forward to hearing more from you guys and keeping up with all the upcoming 4th edition news. So until then, guys, Ryan out.